Welcome to the Flourish with Neural Retraining podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Lowry, founder of Twin Cities Neural Retraining and a certified MAP method practitioner, specializing in allergies and sensitivities, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, sleep issues, infertility, autoimmunity, and other chronic health conditions. Join me for episode 49, where we talk with my client and fellow nutritional therapy practitioner, Melissa Manning, who is interested in the MAP method to address hypothyroidism. Hear about the benefits she experienced from 7 MAP sessions, including emotional, behavioral, and physical shifts, and the improvement of her thyroid function. Melissa mentions Dr. Eric Balkovage, who is very well known for his work with cellular hypothyroidism. His recent book, The Thyroid Debacle, written with Dr. Kelly Halderman, describes the factors contributing to the cell danger response, leading to hypothyroidism. To learn more about this paradigm shift in our understanding of the root causes of hypothyroid conditions and how changing the way your brain responds to experiences can alleviate underlying stressors, listen to episode 88 of the Thyroid Answers podcast. As always, we must disclaim that the information we share in the podcast is for educational purposes only. As MAP method practitioners, we do not diagnose or treat disease. Instead, we work with the person and the personality to optimize health. We did have some issues with the microphone during this recording, so I do apologize for the sound quality. Now let's get to our conversation and hear from Melissa. So welcome, Melissa. I am so pleased to have you join me to have this conversation about MAP and MAP sessions. We worked together for a few months, starting the end of last year. According to my notes, it was like September of last year until March of this year. Over that time, we did 7 sessions. And so it's been a while, and I'm so happy to have you join me to discuss, what you felt the benefits were from a set of MAP sessions and what you thought about the experience. So welcome, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to be talking with you today, Madeline.
So maybe we can start with how you heard about the MAP method and why you decided to try it.
Well, I heard about the MAP method because I am a fellow nutritional therapy practitioner, and you had posted on our forum that we have something about MAP, and it intrigued me. I had never done anything like MAP or anything, I guess I want to say any kind of intervention for my brain. I was working on my own health journey with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. But I had done just about everything else. And, I had changed my diet. I had tried to mitigate stress. I was exercising. I was doing all the things. And I had seen a couple of doctors. We were traveling around a lot at this point in our lives, my husband and I. And so I had been under the care of a couple of doctors that were, practicing with a holistic mindset. And, they would help me along a little bit, but looking back, I remembered each one of them kind of looking at me at the end of our sessions saying, I think it has something to do with stress for you. And I thought, oh, really? I think I'm just handling things pretty well. So about, this time is when I saw your mention of MAP. So I joined your Facebook page where you were posting more about MAP, just so that I could learn a little bit more about it.
So you joined my Facebook group. You wanted to learn more about the MAP method, and then um, what made you decide to try it? Do you recall what it is that made you decide, maybe this might be the thing that I need that would complement everything else I've done for my thyroid condition, the diet, the supplements, the holistic approach, and so forth. I mean, what was there something that tipped you towards?
Well, I just was following along on your Facebook page, and I also, one of the practitioners that I had been seeing recommended Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief. So I had just read that book. So I was kind of primed, I think, and open to this idea of, shifting my biology through my mind and my beliefs. And so, yeah, that's about when you started presenting more about MAP. And I had seen things about things like neurofeedback and EMDR before, but you did some comparisons and talked about those things also on the Facebook page. So I thought, I think this is what I need to try. I'm pretty convinced it's a lot of my thought patterns that are kind of holding me back from healing, and not just healing, but holding me back in other areas of my life, and keeping me closed off in certain areas where I wanted to be more open and moving forward. So I thought, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was going to work, but I thought I'm just going to try it. Yeah. And my husband was encouraging me to do it too. So,
yeah. Well, that's great. And so you're referring to my Facebook page. It's a Facebook group actually called Mind Remap for Health, which I started around this method called the MAP method of advanced neural retraining. And it's kind of a mixed group in that I created it for my clients and maybe prospective clients to be able to read up more about the MAP method and how it's used for chronic health conditions. But also I had a number of other certified MAP practitioners that were interested in using the MAP method for chronic health issues. The method itself was really developed for more psychotherapy types of purposes, like anxiety and depression, PTSD, things like that. And there are only a group subset of us that are trying to use it for chronic health issues. And so I have, I have kind of attracted other MAP method practitioners that are also following that page and contributing to the conversation, because we're all trying to sort of monitor, right? What should I be reading? What should I be doing? How should I be, what angle should I be taking on these various things? And so, it's kind of both. It's the lay public as well as MAP practitioners. So you heard about the MAP method. You read enough that it made you feel like maybe this is something I should try. Do you remember your first session? Do you remember coming to the first session, and what were you hoping? What were you hoping to address with MAP sessions? And then, what do you remember about that first session, if anything?
I didn't have, I would say I came to my first MAP session a little bit unsure of what I wanted to address as far as specific memories or, negative emotions that I felt were holding me back. I didn't have a specific trauma that really stood out in my mind. I was kind of trying to think, well, what is it exactly? Or not that it was just one thing, but what are the things that I need to work on? And yeah, in fact, I'm the person, if I did the adverse childhood experiences, my score is 0, So but I knew there were things. So I felt like, Madeline, you were helpful in helping me kind of sift through. I put some ideas out there for you, like, I think I want to work on this. And we did work on some of the things I put out there, but you had a really good way of asking me questions and trying to, kind of help me think what are the issues that we really need to address here? What are the things that are holding you back? Where are the negative responses kind of built up over the years?
And so the first session is a shorter session. It's the introductory session. It's a 60-minute session. And what I remember about that, well, for everyone, right, we want to work on an emotional memory. Sometimes it's a phobia, or sometimes it's like a trigger for anxiety or something. Or it can be a memory from any point in life that has some intense emotions around it. Because in the first session, we're initiating you to the MAP method, and we want to take a subject that is something that you and I can see the difference in between the beginning and the end of the session, right? So we want to see that the emotional intensity is coming down, is diminishing through the rounds of instruction that are provided in the session. So we picked an emotional topic. It had to do with your husband and his cancer diagnosis. Do you want to talk about that? Do you remember what happened in that session, or how it felt to you?
What I remember is I didn't notice a big shift in the session. For me, it was like over time. And that was the first one we worked on. But I remember a couple of other things that we worked through in subsequent sessions that had bigger shifts for me. One was a relationship and my, some negative emotions that, even though the relationship was in a good place, at that time, there were things from the past that would get triggered, and those negative emotions had built up over time. That was one. And then the other big one was negative emotions and responses that had built up from living in a cross-cultural experience situation. Mine in particular was in the Middle East as a woman for 30 years. So that was a lot. That was a lot to work through. Yeah, so those I remember the most because they were long-term situations where I had built up a lot of, negative emotions and responses.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you say was memorable about the sessions?
About the sessions themselves, they were very relaxing. I didn't, sense any shifts in the moment, or I didn't have any physical responses in the moment of the sessions, though I remember feeling very relaxed and cared for, maybe even soothed is a word I would use. Yeah, they felt very healing, even though I didn't feel big shifts. For me, when I noticed the shifts were when I would come back into those situations that in the past had elicited the negative responses, and they just weren't there in the same way anymore.
So is there like an example of that maybe you want to talk about?
Yeah, there was, I can think of one situation with my husband, and, he said something or did something that in the past would have triggered a negative feeling about myself. And I just didn't have it. And the next day I told him, I said, you know what, that's just okay. I mean, I didn't have a response, and I feel okay about myself. And he said, I noticed that you didn't respond the way you usually do when when I do that or say that. And so he noted it as well. Yeah. The other situation was, in a cross-cultural context, different anxieties I had, specifically around language and not feeling adequate, not feeling understood or heard because I couldn't communicate fully in a second language the way I wanted to. And I was able to re-engage in some of those cross-cultural relationships with women without that feeling of inadequacy, even though, practically speaking, I was still somewhat inadequate. My language didn't take a huge leap forward, but those negative feelings of inadequacy and not feeling heard, understood, and dissipated.
So, the shifts that we look for in a session are mostly around emotional shifts, like the negative emotions around a particular memory or set of memories becomes less intense, from the beginning to the end of the session. And so, that's not a huge shift, of course, but it is it's like the sign or the signal that I'm observing in the client to have the feeling that we're getting somewhere, that there's progress being made, something is changing, right? And then, as you say, the real shift, right? This method would not be very remarkable if all it could do is diffuse the negative emotions around a given memory, right? But the point is that when we are giving instructions for the subconscious mind to start treating those memories and neutralizing the emotions associated with the memory, it is also neutralizing other related memories, emotions, beliefs, and even aspects of the personality, right? Like behaviors that we've developed in response to similar experiences from the past. And that's really where the changes come, right? Emotionally, mentally, behaviorally, and physically, in terms of like physical health, physical symptoms, physical patterns. And so, as you say, like those kinds of shifts are something that you notice after a session. Some people say it's within days, and some people say, it takes, I notice it in the weeks after. There seems to be a kind of integration that has to happen after a session. And then we notice that our behaviors change, our emotional responses changed, right? Our physiology has changed. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I remember, I think I had listened to I can't remember specific podcasts, but, maybe I'm just going to have a dramatic shift, the next day or the next week. For me, I think it was a little bit slower, but I did see it come. When I'm trying to think of what month it was this summer. My husband and I were in upheaval again because his cancer had returned after a very short remission. And so we made the decision to leave our overseas home and come back to the States. But I was seeing my practitioner in Istanbul, and I did some blood work for him. And for the first time in, I don't know, maybe three years, my thyroid numbers were all in range. And this was in the midst of a pretty big I thought that was really significant. He was encouraged. They still weren't at an optimal level, but he said, "No, look, all your numbers are in range for the first time." So I was like, wow. And this is probably in the middle of, one of the biggest stresses in our life. So that was very encouraging to me, and, confirmation that, yeah, it didn't happen really quickly, but it was, I was continuing to heal, and the physiology was following the MAP sessions and the work that we had done on emotions and other little symptoms as well, that we had talked about that I had. I'm just, those are kind of like the hard data, the blood test. But there were other symptoms as well that have cleared up.
So do you want to talk about some of those? It is, yeah. So really any of the emotional, mental, or physical changes that you noted, I think would be interesting to hear about.
Yeah. One of the things that we had talked about was lower back pain. And I won't say that I never experienced any discomfort in my lower back. Every once in a while there's some tightness, but I don't have any lower back pain anymore. That was really the only other physical thing I can think of. Emotionally, and just, I just sense an opening of who I am. Things that I was kind of had closed off in my life, that I just, wasn't open and wasn't free in to express myself or to, communicate with others. I guess openness, that's one word that I would use to describe how I feel about my life now as compared to before the MAP session. A lot more openness in every area.
One of the things that I remember we did at least one session on was the perception of your hair falling out. Well, not perception, but I mean, yeah, hair falling out. And it's funny because after we did that session, it was like, I think I did a lot more sessions like that for other people. It's just, it is definitely something that really pushes people's buttons. And well, I guess they were all for women now that I think about it. But yeah, it is something that just is really, I think, triggering. And, can you talk about that and what you noticed the effects were, if any, from MAP sessions?
At the time, it did start to slow the hair shedding after the MAP session. However, as we did go, I don't know, that seems to be one of the physical symptoms that came back this last summer as we were making this big transition. And so I've tried not to be stressed about it. And just, I've been listening to the tapes that you made for healing and emotions. For a while, I hadn't been listening to them very regularly, but I did start listening to them again recently. And I don't know, this might not really relate to the MAP session in particular, but I was reading something the other day, and I just thought, somebody said that the area that is that where you're feeling pain, or and I thought, well, I'm not really feeling pain, but it's paining me that my hair is falling out. So, just put your hands on it and appreciate that part of your body. And wow, I that really touched me, and I did that, and it really felt healing. It really did, and it's slowing compared to where it was earlier this summer, but it's not something that's completely.
Yeah. The other things I remember you mentioning were impacts on your sleep and digestion. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, sleep has been great for the most part. Every once in a while we had a little bit of a stressful event about a week ago, where our shipment coming from overseas was just not, the shipping company wasn't responding, so we thought it was lost. but it's found. But anyway, so but overall my sleep has been very good, not disturbed. And also digestion has improved. And that, again, that wasn't something that happened quickly, but it's in a place now where it hasn't been as long as I can remember. So it's in a good place. Yeah. But it did take, I would say, a few months after I completed the MAP session. And I remember you telling me, sometimes it takes some time for the physiology to catch up with the changes in our brain. And yeah, I have experienced that.
Yeah.
But I was glad you told me that, because I was, kind of expecting it maybe to be more instantaneous, or, a couple days later or something. But I'm glad you encouraged me to be patient, because yeah, I did see some big shifts in both those areas that you just mentioned, the sleep and the digestion.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I see this is like, your practitioners were right. They were picking up on like maybe there's some stress here. Like, they probably figured out, that you take care of yourself very well. You're doing all the right things from that standpoint. But maybe there's some kind of stress here that is resulting in depressed function in the thyroid. And often when we think about stress, or when our practitioners tell us, go home and think about, the stressors you have in your life, we think about things like work and finances and interpersonal relationships and things like that. But what we don't often think about is the subconscious sources of stress. And like, you described some of the habitual ways that you might react to certain kinds of situations where you feel badly about yourself. That's a stress. Our brain, our limbic brain, the danger sensing part of our brain, will react to that just like any other kind of threat out there. And so people who have like a lot of negative thoughts, or like negative self-talk patterns, those are stressors. And they are not what's commonly thought of when we talk about the stress load in our lives, but they can be very prevalent, right? These habitual ways of thinking or responding that are stressful can permeate every day, of our lives. And so by alleviating these sources of stress, right, the body can start to recover. But of course, there's going to be a delay. It takes time. Like, you lift off that stressor, or the set of stressors, but of course the body doesn't just bounce back the next day, even if you are a nutritional therapy practitioner by training, right? It takes time, because it's like there's been all these projects, that have been put on the back burner for so long. And now, you can just imagine like trying to for all the systems of the body to start to come back online, and for things to start to um, achieve homeostasis again, that in a set of physiological processes that will take weeks to months. It's not an overnight thing. But it is, it's if you can understand, that relationship between alleviating the stressor and then being able to set yourself up for optimal health, at least from that standpoint, then I think, you can start to appreciate why it is that working with subconscious sources of stress can have an effect on physical health.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was, yeah, totally there with, the conversations in my head. And yeah, realizing that, the danger that my body felt was, I could produce that in my mind. And the cell danger response. And I had been hearing about that from a thyroid doctor that I had been listening to. And, he was mentioning the self-talk and negative emotions contributing to this cell danger response, which was, in his opinion, a big part of hypothyroidism, because the way he explained it is the thyroid was deactivating, deactivating for a reason. It was an adaptive response to cellular stress. And so, when he started talking about that, that's what pretty much convinced me. Yeah, I'm kind of, it is the stress that I'm producing myself, not just like you said, the outside stresses. Those have been real in our life too. Especially this last year and a half with my husband's cancer, and now a big transition back to the States. But I think more significant than that was the stress I was producing in my own mind. And that's why I wanted to do MAP, to deal with those things.
I mean, you are facing very significant stresses. No one would say otherwise, but it looks like that just by alleviating some of the other subconscious levels of stress, that we were able to see a physiological shift. That's the potential of neural retraining, really. That so much of that stress response can be internally generated. And it's internally generated because of past experiences in life that have been painful or traumatic, and that we've kind of been wired to produce self-defeating behaviors or negative self-talk, or emotional responses that are just feeding the stress response, keeping us in a stress response. And you also talked about Dr. Balkovage, and Eric Balkovage, who has the Thyroid Answers podcast. Mm-hmm. And he does talk a lot about cellular hypothyroidism and the cell danger response, which is a state that the cells go into when they are, when we are stressed, right? There are hormones that are released. And so you can almost, so these hormones are being carried throughout our circulatory system and kind of bathing all the cells in this, right? So there's this communication. You said you read The Biology of Belief, and the other book I recommend about this is Candace Pert's book, The Molecules of Emotion. She's a Harvard PhD who was studying the molecules of emotion, probably more from a pharmaceutical standpoint. But she realized that there are receptors for these molecules of emotion all over the body. Every single cell has receptors for these. And so our emotional states inform our cells, whether we are in danger or not. So the cell danger response basically says that cells have different modes that they go into depending on whether they think life is good, and we should be keeping ourselves in a state of optimal health and reproducing and eating and digesting, and all the good things that you do when you're relaxed and safe. But when the cells are receiving ongoing signals that we are not safe, then they go into that cell danger response. And actually, we see that the mitochondria stop producing ATP, and ATP is the energy of the cell. So if you imagine the fuel of the cell is going away, or it's diminishing, the production's going down, then that cell, whatever it is, whether it's an endocrine cell or a skin cell, or whatever function it has in your body, is now its function is being also diminished. And so again, these habitual emotional states can sustain a cell danger response that can affect all functions of the body, and the thyroid, of course, is one of them. So, do you have any advice or any thoughts about the MAP method and who could benefit from it, or any advice for people who might be thinking about trying it?
Mm. Yeah, well, it's hard to imagine who wouldn't benefit. I mean, I think just about everybody could realize some benefit from it, though perhaps people won't do it until there's a real, like with most health things, until there's a really strong felt need for some relief. um, but yeah, I think like everybody could in some way benefit from it. As you know, I've recommended it to a lot of people that are close to me, and the ones that are closest to me have seen a difference in my life, and so they have been willing to try it. And I have to say, the ones that have tried it, I have seen a shift in them too, a notable shift. So. And for all different issues and health concerns. So I think it could have benefit for just about everybody. I would encourage people to try it. It's not hard, it's not painful. It's passive, and you just receive. And yeah, I can't think of any reason why somebody wouldn't try it.
I remember you telling me um, you had to give a talk. Gosh, was it a eulogy that you had to give? And
Yeah.
you really, I think you said that your daughter, someone in your family, really noticed the difference, and you noticed the difference in yourself too, and having to step up and speak, to do this kind of public speaking that I think maybe would have been difficult for you in the past. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, that was in January. It was my mother's funeral, her memorial service, and yeah, I had written a eulogy for her, and it was in some ways very easy for me to write it. The thoughts just flowed, and I was actually almost excited to stand up there and share my thoughts, because I wanted people to know about my mom and all the lovely things about her. And I really looked forward to honoring her. So in an interesting way, I was actually looking forward to that eulogy, and I really enjoyed it because I felt like I got to stand up and tell everybody about my mom. And um, yeah, it was a really pleasant and beautiful experience for me. But yeah, I'm one that tends to, in the past at least, and I still do somewhat get choked up quite easily. And I wondered how I would be able to do that at give the eulogy at my mom's funeral. But it was it was wonderful. And yeah, my daughter remarked, well, I said to my daughter, I said, did you notice I didn't cry? She said, yeah, I noticed, Mom. You always break down. But yeah, so that was a notable experience for me, because I'd never been able to get through something. So I've done some public speaking before, but anything that's very meaningful or touching has been really hard for me to do. So without, getting choked up or breaking down, that was a notable experience, something new for me.
So I'd like to think that, one of the benefits of MAP method sessions, um, and certainly we practitioners talk about this because, of course we get to undergo so many, is that it's freeing somehow, to kind of go through these sessions and kind of shed the emotional baggage of the past and become more connected to authenticity, I don't know, our self-expression. It's something that I observe in my clients and my colleagues, that as we go through the process, that opening, that you described before, that starts to show up in different ways. So another lovely side benefit, I think, of working with the mind and resolving some of those traumas that have affected us, whether we know about them or don't know about them. You don't have to know what it is that's affecting you in the moment. You just have to know sort of how you're being held back in your life, right? And that's all you need to bring to the session. The subconscious mind does the rest. It figures out what the connections are and what needs to be neutralized. Yeah, I think it is beneficial, on all kinds of levels, whether you want to work with physical health issues or something else. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today, Melissa. It was really wonderful to chat with you and see you again.
Yeah, thank you, Madeline. I enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, as you know, I'll be recommending that to more people. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Thanks for joining us for the Flourish with Neural Retraining podcast. Please listen again and remember to follow us and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or Stitcher. To learn more about health applications of the MAP method of advanced neural retraining, visit our website, mindremapforhealth.com. To learn more about the MAP Coaching Institute, visit mapcoachinginstitute.com. Until the next time, be well and flourish. Content of this podcast copyright 2021 by Twin Cities Neural Retraining. Music by Barbara Ben.